So thank you for being here, Alex, and welcome to the Hoops and Huddle podcast. And today we are discussing the Atlanta Hawks season preview. I'm really excited about this episode because Alex is, let me put it this way, the Hawks propaganda is live on his feed. He loves his hometown Hawks, loves them, loves them, loves them. So tonight we get to dive into the roster, talk about the front office, talk how does he feel about ownership? How does he feel about his roster's chances this year? So Alex, why don't you say hi to the people and we'll get going and jump right into the roster.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Maliika, I really appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk about some Hawks basketball tonight. I got high hopes for the season, very high hopes, high expectations. So I'm ready to get into it and break it down with you.
Sounds great. So, one of the things I looked up before we got on, you guys have favorable. You guys are not at the second apron. You're below the first apron by 9K, it looks like. And then you're below the super apron by 22K. So you're not like right there at that tipping point. You guys could technically make a move to get another player, like that can help you guys. But let's talk about the roster itself. Like, how do you feel? Like, I know you love Trae Young, so let's start off talking about. No, let's start off talking about how you feel about the roster in general, and then we could talk about some of the special highlight players on the team. So, give me your highlights. Like your starting five. How do you feel about who are your starting five? Name them, and how do you feel about the strength of them in the East?
Okay, yes. In terms of starting five goes, we got obviously Trae Young at the point. He's the head of the snake. He is the oil that makes the engine run. We got DeJounte Murray at the two guard,
Mm-hmm.
who's kind of a hybrid, as you know, Maliika. He can play both the one and the two, but we have him in the two for this
I love
team.
him. He's one of
Mhm.
my favorite players, to be
Yeah,
honest.
he's a dog. I love DJ. And then we got most likely DeAndre Hunter if he's still on the team, which I expect him to still be on the squad when the season starts. He would be our starting three, whom, by the way, he is better than RJ Barrett, Maliika, and for all you other listeners out there. So
This is
DeAndre
your
Hunter.
time, so we're not gonna, this is your time. So,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely. So yeah, we got Hunter at the three. We got now the four spot. This is where it gets a little dicey because, as you know, we lost John Collins this offseason.
Yep.
Made the trade
Did.
with the Jazz.
Finally, like that's been talked about for years now.
I know, right? I know. I feel like every year we've had the trade rumors, and this was the year that it finally happened. So, JC,
Mm-hmm.
best of luck to him and Utah. Nothing but well wishes for him. I loved him when he was
Mm-hmm.
on our squad. Really great guy. But the starting four, it's going to be one of two people, right? It's going to be either be the more veteran player who he's not even that old to be honest, because Sadiq Bey, would only be his fourth year in the league. So Sadiq Bey could possibly be at the four. If Quinn Snyder wants more shooters around Trae and DeJounte, then we could elect Sadiq Bey at the four. Or who my personal favorite would be for this starting role would be Jalen Johnson, the third year player out of
Mm-hmm.
Duke. I call him, Ben Simmons if he actually, had a pair, right? So he was better than Ben Simmons. He is the second coming of LeBron James because he is that point forward archetype, right? He's 6'9",
Okay. Okay.
230. He can dribble, he can pass, he can defend, he can rebound, he can do it all, right? The only downside to Jalen Johnson's game is he's not the best three-point shooter. So we're going to have some question marks around the spacing if he's in the starting lineup. But everything else that he brings to the table for all the things that I just mentioned with the pass, the playmaking, being able to lead in transition, the defense, etc. That's what makes him so special. And then at the five, we're going to have most likely Clint Capella. I know there's been a lot of trade rumors around if Clint's going to get traded, most notably
Right.
to the Dallas Mavericks, or if he's going to stay on the squad. And I figured there would have been a move made by now. We still haven't seen a move. So my guess is he's going to be back and he's going to be, the returning starter as he's been for the past 3 years. So yeah, Clint Capella. So that's our starting five. Um, in
How
terms
they
of
stack up
highlights,
in the East? Yeah. How do you feel they stack up in the East?
honestly, how they stack up in these, like on paper, I think they're really good. I think they have, with that starting five, I think a top, six roster, like a top six seed potential with that starting five. I don't think they're as good as Boston. Milwaukee, obviously, they have Giannis. So, but outside of Giannis, they don't really have anyone that eye-popping. Chris Middleton is aging. Brooke Lopez is aging.
But Chris Middleton could be healthy this year because he's dealing with injury issues. So we'll see what he looks like. I mean, they don't have a quote unquote sexy roster, but like this year with a healthy Chris Middleton, and they were embarrassed out of the first round last year. So we'll see what Milwaukee looks like this year. They could be.
I mean, they could still be good, right?
Elevated.
Any team that has Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be, in the running
Yeah.
every single year. He's just
Yeah.
that. But yeah, like I said, like all the other complementary players like Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, Drew Holiday, they're all a lot older players, past their 30s. So we'll see how they mesh. And like you mentioned, Chris Middleton is coming back healthy,
Yeah.
but you never know with his age. I think he's 33 now, coming off an injury. It's not like if he was, 25, 26 anymore. So it might take him some time to acclimate again. But outside of that, the Heat, obviously, they just made the finals, but they're never really that good of a regular season team. They typically end up, come postseason time, but they lost some key players too, Gabe Vincent and a couple of other guys. So yeah, I mean, I think we definitely got potential to be a top 6 seed with that starting 5 for sure.
How do you feel about your bench? Like, do you think you have
I love it.
a strong bench? And if you do have holes, where are your holes on your bench?
So to answer your first question, yes, I love the bench, right? So in terms of the bench play, most notably, we got Bogdan Bogdanovic, who I'm sure you've been keeping up with the World Cup. He's been a top, 3-5 player in FIBA this year. So we got him coming off the bench, who in my hopes is he's going to be in contention for 6th man of the year. So we got Bogdan Bogdanovic. We got the best backup center in the entire NBA. That is not an exaggeration, Maliika. Onyeka Okongwu is by far the best backup center, and he's coming into year 3, so I have really high hopes for him. He has all NBA defense potential, really. I know I like to, push a lot of propaganda, but I'm telling you, Onyeka Okongwu has all NBA defender potential once he really hits his stride. And we got Saddiq Bey, right? If Saddiq starts or Jalen Johnson starts, I think Jalen Johnson is going to get the starting nod. So that means Saddiq would be coming off the bench. He's a really, really reliable 3-point shooter. He's a really good hustle guy that gets a lot of offensive rebounds for us. And he's just kind of a microwave shooter off the bench for us. As you know, a couple years ago, he had 52 points in a regular season game one year. So he can score now. And then we got Patty Mills, the veteran, the Spurs championship player, Patty Mills, who's a vet for us. He's going to be coming off the bench playing some spot.
I am familiar with the Patty Mills experience. Let's just say, you guys are in a strong position and with the guards. So thankfully for you guys, you will not be relying on Patty Mills. At this age, he's not the Patty Mills from San Antonio. Those days are long gone. He'll have some sparks, but he is not that dependable. And the Nets experience, it was very much not exactly one you write home about, but he has some bright spots. You can't be depending, on him like that. But as long as you're not, then he's a spark, then that's great.
Yeah, and we're not going to be ever depending on him unless, God forbid, one of our, Trae or DJ get injured. But yeah, I see him playing maybe 5 to 7 minutes a night coming off the bench in situations. He's still a reliable spot-up 3-point shooter, as we saw in World Cup play this year. So he's still got some
He's a turnstile on defense.
He is. He sucks on defense. He's small. And he's old. So, but, if he can hit a couple threes for us off the bench, will be good. And another player that I have not mentioned, I'm saving the best for last, potentially, AJ Griffin. Yes, sir. Yeah. AJ Griffin, the second-year player out of Duke. He had, he was 19 years old last year, and he almost had a 50.
What is his size? What is AJ Griffin's size?
He's like 6'6" and a half, 215-ish.
Okay.
So He can play the 2 or the 3 for us.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a really, really reliable 3-point shooter. He shot like 38.5% from 3 as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
He had multiple 20-plus point games for us coming off the bench. And he had 2 game winners in his rookie year, too. So he's got that clutch factor in him now. So, yeah, I mean, our bench is really nice. Our bench is super solid. In my opinion, I think, we have 2 or 3 bench players that could start on half the teams in the league. So we got depth.
That's
I'm
pretty
excited.
strong.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to pick an area, because you guys have a lot of guards. If there was an area where you feel like there's a weakness or a trade could be made to improve the team to be a solid top 6 team in the East, what move would that be in terms of position?
Oof. At this point in time, so you're
Yeah,
asking where would I try to improve the most? It would
yeah,
be
yeah.
probably like another backup big right now, right? So we have,
Mm-hmm.
Clint and Onyeka who both play the 5. They can't play anything else. But outside of Jalen Johnson, we don't really have a true power forward now that John Collins is gone. Sadiq Bey can play power forward a bit, but he's more best suited at the 3, in my opinion, because
Yeah,
he's
to me, he's a 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a little undersized. He's only 6'7". So preferably I would not want to see him at the 4 as much. So yeah, we would really need like another backup power forward. We'll see.
Mm.
We'll see what happens. I could see some situations where Sadiq plays the 3 and DeAndre Hunter actually plays the 4. He's a little bit bigger than Sadiq Bey. He, longer wingspan. He's 6'8"-ish. So that might be viable. I was on the Pascal Siakam trade earlier in the offseason because
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, yeah.
I think with Pascal and Trae and DeJounte, I think that could be like a top 3 seed in the East, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
at this point, from what I heard we had a deal done, but Pascal really wants that Supermax eligibility. And as you know, if he leaves Toronto, he can't be eligible for that Supermax. So he basically told our front office, look, if you trade for me, I'm basically going to sit out to kind of scare teams away. So that's unfortunate because I think we could have done some really special things with him. But with that type of mindset, keep him away from my team. I don't want him anywhere near us.
I think it's interesting because we'll see if he gets that offer for Supermax because I don't think I don't know if Toronto's going to offer him that. So we'll see how that goes. Now, yeah, we went through your roster. So let's talk about Trae Young and how you feel he stacks up with the top point guards in the league. And why I know you see Trae Young as that dude and one of the top 2 or them, like guard, point guards in the league. Yes, you guys heard me correctly. So share with me and share with the audience why you think Trae Young is that top 2 or top point guard, or at least in the East. Like, give me your argument for Trae Young.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In terms of the Eastern Conference, I think there's no question, right? Trae Young is by
Mm-hmm.
far the best point guard in the East. Like it's not even a
Even above
question.
Harden if he's there.
If Harden's there, yeah,
But
he's still better. I mean, especially in this point in time, absolutely. Prime Harden, that's a different story, right? But
mm-hmm.
at this point in time, Harden is not the player that he used to be. And as well as like ever since the rule change a couple years ago with the foul baiting rules, he just hasn't looked the same. So yeah, even with James Harden, I still say Trae Young is by and large the best point guard in the East. If you look at the landscape of all the other top Eastern Conference point guards, you got Tyrese Halliburton from the Pacers. You got what's his name? I guess Drew Holiday for the Bucks. You got Jalen Brunson from the Knicks. And none of these guys, like they're promising young players. LaMelo Ball is also really promising, but they just don't have the resume that Trae Young has, and they don't have the accolades nor the eye test. When you look at the eye test, like people are propping up Tyrese Halliburton to be like, this all elite point guard, but he's never even been to the playoffs once, Maliika. Like, let's give it some time. And his team just hasn't been all that good ever. Even with Sacramento, obviously I'll cut him some slack because he was a rookie and this and that. But yeah, he just hasn't done anything. Jalen Brunson, he's never even been an all-star or an all-NBA player ever in his career. Drew Holiday's never been like a number one option on any team that's done significant. He might have been like a number one option in New Orleans.
He's a great defensive guard.
He's
That's
a great defensive
like,
guard.
yeah.
For sure, for sure. But if Trae Young and Giannis Antetokounmpo teamed up, they would win 5 rings in a row, no question. So, in terms of when you look at what Trae Young does for his team, being the number one option, being the primary scorer, being the primary facilitator, and just doing everything, getting opposing teams in foul trouble, Trae Young is the best at that. I think he's the best combination of just scoring output as well as playmaking production from that point guard position. So in the East, Trae Young is by far the number one point guard in the East. Then when you transition to the West, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because there's a lot of great point guards in the West. You got the Currys of the world, Luka and Damian Lillard's, Kyrie Irving's, etc. The only one definitive player that I could say is better than Trae Young right now is Steph Curry, right? Steph Curry is kind of the cream of the crop, in my opinion.
Not Luka?
Not Luka, Steph Curry.
Okay.
I mean, Maliika, Luka couldn't even make the play-in. He wasn't even in the playoffs last year.
That's true, but
yeah,
look at the team he has. And the West is not like that. The West is stronger than the East. It's a whole different, you have stronger teams in the West.
I think the West might be more top heavy, but I think the East is better as like top to bottom, in my opinion, right? I think the East, the East is tough. Yeah, absolutely. Because matter of fact, let me just look up something real quick, because I had this conversation with a buddy of mine in the middle of last season. So when you look at the standings in the West from last year, right? So like the Pelicans, the Lakers were the 7th seed. They only won 43 games last year in the West, right? 43 games. The Hawks were the 7th seed. They won 41. But when you look, I'd say it's pretty even, because when you look at the Thunder, the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, are they that much better than the Bulls, the Heat, than the Raptors, etc. So I think it's pretty even. Obviously, they got Denver, the defending champions, but I mean, when you look at the East, you got the Bucks, you got the Celtics, the 76ers are kind of the top 3 main teams from last year, compared to the West top 3 teams, Denver, Memphis, and Sacramento, right? I don't think you would ever consider Sacramento or Memphis an actual legitimate contender last year or this year. And any of the top 3 teams in the East could have won a championship this year, right? Boston could have won, Milwaukee could have easily won, Philadelphia could have won. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty even, in my opinion.
And okay, okay. I mean, that gives me a different perspective, because my viewpoint I love the East Coast and I love the East teams, but I always feel like the West, I'm staying up late because I want to see some of these West matchups. With LaMelo, I think this season could be a good one for him with Miles Bridges back in the lineup. You got PJ coming back. I think he has if he's healthy, I think the Hornets can have a decent season. But we'll see how it goes. Also, Tyrese Halliburton. This could be I say this every year. I am one of those Tyrese. I am a fan of his. I like watching him play.
Oh, you're part of the Halley Hive.
Yeah, I'm part of the Halley Hive. I'm just curious to how this season's going to go for him. Indiana, it was my impression that they made some moves that can make them a little interesting. So I'm curious to see so it could be viewing wise competitive. And then you have Orlando. I feel like they're always just lurking there. I think Paolo is really good, but we'll see how they stack up. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes up, because you see the Hawks as a top 6. So you're seeing Boston, Philly, Milwaukee, and the Knicks would be somewhere up there. You guys. And there's another team I'm thinking. I'm sorry?
Cleveland.
Okay, yeah, that's true. This glare is killing me. I need to figure out this glare situation. And let's talk about your coaching staff. How do you feel about, I know like with the Hawks fans the last few years, you guys weren't exactly happy with your head coach. How do you feel about your coaching staff now? Like what are your feelings about him as the number one fan and content creator for the Hawks?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the coaching staff, I love it, right? I
Quinn
think
Snyder is one, I think this would be his first full season with you guys. And I mean, yeah, you guys have to love it, but I just wanted I just wanted to formally hear
Oh,
from you.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Quinn Snyder. I think if you talk to other players around the league that have actually played for Quinn Snyder, like Donovan Mitchell and other players like that, they only say great things, right? He's a player's coach, not in the sense of, oh, I'm gonna let you just do whatever you want, but he knows how to connect with players. That was one of the
Mhm.
main things that Donovan Mitchell said. He's also really good at developing players, younger guys. So we do have a couple of younger guys, especially on our bench that are in the
Mhm.
second,
Mhm.
third year. But Quinn Snyder, he's great, right? I think the biggest knock on Quinn Snyder from outsiders would be, well, he's never, made it that far. Or he's never had great success in the postseason, right? He's had great regular season success. He's led the Utah Jazz to a couple of number one seeds. He's made it, to the second round a few times when the West was really good, right? In the years past, I think the West was absolutely way better than the East. And but look at his team with Utah. Like he had Donovan Mitchell, and then his second best player was Rudy Gobert, who is just not that good of a player, in my opinion. So I think Quinn, this is going to be probably the most talented team that he's ever had to coach with and to play with. And I'm really excited. Last year, he came at the very end of the season when there was only 20 games left in the regular season. And
Mhm.
everything that I've heard and everything that I've seen around the front office, that was really just kind of like a trial period, right? He wasn't really implementing his full offense. He just wanted to see what this roster had, who the players he wanted to keep, who he liked, and who he thought maybe wasn't going to be a good fit. So I'm really excited with the full offseason with Quinn Snyder to see his high powered, a lot of 3-point shooting, run and gun style offense.
Mhm.
I'm excited for it. So I really have high hopes. That is one of the main reasons why I see the Hawks being a top 6 seed this year is because of Quinn Snyder being at the helm. Because in years past we've had Nate, we've had Lloyd Pierce, and they just haven't been very good.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have been going through it coach wise for sure. How do you feel about his assistants he brought in? Like you have Igor. And Igor, I don't know, like if he was fully able to take reign on with the Nets offense. Because I was expecting more out of Igor, and I'm just not sure like whether he was really given the offensive reign. So it'll be curious to see um if he's able to do that with the Hawks. Because I didn't see the punch I thought I was going to see at times consistently, but it'll be curious to see what the Hawks, what you guys do this season. I'm a DeJounte fan, so I'm curious to see what he does with the pieces that are there. So that's one of the coaches I am familiar with. So I was curious to how you felt about some of the other assistants and Igor as well.
Yeah, yeah. Igor definitely. I think Quinn Snyder actually did a really good job, kind of crafting his assistant squad. Igor
Mhm.
was one of them. We also have Mike Bray, who also
Yeah.
is a long-term veteran or head coach. He was the head coach for Notre Dame basketball. He was one of the most winningest coaches ever in college basketball history. I think he's going to make a strong impact. We also have Brittany Donaldson, who
Yep.
came from Toronto. So shout out to Brittany. She's actually the very first women coach ever to be on the Atlanta Hawks coaching staff. So we kind of
Oh
made,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
she was the first, female coach, either whether a head coach or an assistant coach, to be a part of this organization. So I'm excited about her. She came from Detroit, where she kind of was there for the last couple of years. She was one of the assistants there, as well as the director of coaching analytics. So yeah, she has really good insights into just data analysis, basketball operations, etc. So I think her mind and paired up with some other assistant coaches, is going to be really good for us. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. What about Steve Clee? I think it looks like his name is. That's
Steve
one
Clee, yes, Cly. It's actually pronounced Cly. Steve Cly.
five.
Yes, I
Okay,
forgot
cool.
about. Yeah, he
Cool.
joined back earlier this year actually. So
Okay,
he was actually already
he's
on the
already there.
Hawks. Yeah, he was
Okay.
on the Hawks, or was he on the Hawks? I think I don't remember actually. I don't remember exactly when he joined. I feel like it was like February, March, and I don't know remember exactly when we fired Nate McMillan. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he from what I know about him, he was a former overseas coach. He coached in it was either Italy or Portugal for one of their basketball teams.
Mm-hmm.
But he spent time. The reason why he's on the coaching staff now is because he actually was an assistant in Utah with Quinn Snyder. So obviously Coach Snyder probably liked him enough to bring him to Atlanta. So yeah, I think this new coaching staff has a mixture of coaches that Quinn Snyder has familiarity with in Utah, where they were successful, as well as some new faces maybe that hasn't worked with. But I think he's done a good job, kind of just formulating a well balanced coaching staff.
And when we look at your front office, how do you feel about your GM this year and over the last, the progression of your front office? Do you feel like they have a plan, and are you behind that plan? It seems like you're happy with the team now, so you're probably, behind the GM. So I wanted you to talk a little about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for the front office. So in terms of like ownership, I'm not going to get into like the ownership like Tony Wrestler and some of the other Tony
That was
Wrestlers.
gonna be my next question, so you don't want to even bother.
We can dive into that actually, but in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like the like basketball operations portion, right? Like our GM, our assistant GM, etc.
Yeah.
As you know, Landry Fields, he is
Yeah.
our GM. He took over the reins kind of like a year and a half ago. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to see Landry. He's still super young. He might even be like either the youngest or second youngest general manager in all of the NBA. He's still pretty young. He's in his 30s still. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to see what Landry Fields does. He kind of pushed some of the chips in and kind of made a name for himself when he made that DeJounte trade last year. He's more I feel like he's more in tune with the modern game given his age.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's might give him some new insights that this front office hasn't seen to bring in certain players and what coaches to bring in, etc. I know Landry was really instrumental in bringing Coach Quinn Snyder midway or towards the end of last season, and that was largely in part because of our assistant general manager, who is now Kyle Korver. Shout out to Killer Kyle Korver,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
three-point shooters ever in the NBA. So yeah, Kyle Korver, he was actually a player under Coach Snyder back when Quinn Snyder was an assistant for us. I don't know if you knew that, but he was an assistant for us when
Mm-hmm.
Mike Budenholzer was the head coach. So Kyle Korver had great things to say
Yeah.
about Quinn Snyder. He's obviously seen what he's been able to do as a head coach in Utah, and him and Landry kind of worked together and they scooped him up because, as you saw, as soon as we hired Quinn Snyder, a bunch of other teams started firing their coaches, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doc
Mm-hmm.
Rivers was fired, Nick Nurse was fired, etc.
Yeah, it was like this coaching exodus
Yeah, it was
going
crazy.
on. Yeah.
So I know Quinn Snyder would have been at the top of many teams' lists, and I'm just happy we
Timing definitely helped you guys for sure.
exactly,
Because
exactly. He was blessed.
he would have had a selection, he would have had a choice. So that's helped that's to feel good as a team. I mean, as the Nets, we have Sean Mark still. And we have Joe Tsai. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
And we move on. Now
Mhm.
your owner. Now, how do you feel about ownership? Um, and you don't sound like extremely excited, but let's talk
No, no,
about
no. I mean, I'm personally, I'm balanced, right? So, and I also, in a way, like work for the team. I cover the team, so I want to keep like my personal bias out of it.
yeah, yeah,
But
understood.
I mean, in terms of like ownership, Tony Wrestler is our kind of majority principal owner,
Yeah,
and then we have a few minority owners like Grant Hill.
Grant Hill, yeah.
Who else?
One
Grant
of my
Hill.
favorite humans that ever played the game. His
Yeah,
book
Grant Hill was great,
his
but
book
before
was
his injury,
amazing. His book
yeah.
was amazing. But go ahead.
I feel like Grant Hill before his injury, he could have been really special.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Grant Hill's one of the other minority owners. We also
Hmm.
Jesse Itzler, who he's just like an entrepreneur guy. Sarah Blakely, who's actually the owner of Spanx, CEO of Spanx, she's also one of the minority owners for us. So
Hmm.
yeah, we have a bunch of minority owners, but Tony Ressler obviously is the main head honcho. I know a lot of people, a lot of Hawks fans, from what I've heard, are upset that maybe they will label him as kind of like a cheap owner because we're not willing to go over the luxury tax and bring in and spend money on certain players. But it's tough, right? If as an owner, you kind of have to look at everything holistically. You can't
Yeah.
just spend a lot of money and get these players just for the sake of it. You really have to pull those levers when you really think your team is in win now mode, is in contention mode. So we'll see what happens. But Tony Ressler's kind of the main head honcho. Grant Hill, I know, is on the board. And then Tony Ressler's wife, Jamie Gertz, who, if you keep up with the
Yeah.
draft, she's always the girl that does pulls out our balls back when we were in the lottery. So that's Jamie Gertz. But our
She's an
executive
actress as
management,
well. Yeah, she's
yeah,
an actress. Yeah.
yeah, she is. Yeah, she was actually in one of my favorite movies, Twister, back in the day. So
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
the main actress there. And then we have like our executive team, right? Our CEO is Steve Koonin, really, really cool guy.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's kind of been very innovative in terms of like different marketing strategies and how to connect with like more of like a millennial crowd. They did a survey like a couple years ago just to kind of see what demographic of people were coming to the games and who he wanted to cater that towards. And he noticed obviously it was a lot of millennial age people, people my age who are in their 30s, uh, you know, low to mid 30s, or in their high, late 20s would be like kind of their ideal target market. So he did a great job kind of just revamping the stadium, revamping, getting butts in the seats. So yeah, I mean, all in all, I'm happy with our ownership and our executive team. And
Good.
hopefully, what was that?
I said good.
Yeah. Hopefully, when the time comes, Tony's going to pay up and get over that luxury tax if we're ready. So hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
And with this new CBA that we have in the league, it's going to be interesting to see how the Hawks navigate it moving forward. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with mid-level players because right now, Hawks is one of the few teams that are considered like what contenders that have room. Because a lot of, you had a lot of these guys signing minimums to get on the contender because they were already at the Supermax. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Now, one of the segments I love to do is the rewind, where I have people, and you're going to give me your favorite Hawks team ever. What is your favorite Hawks team?
Ooh.
Which year and why?
Oh God, that's a great question, Maliika. Ooh. So personally, I mean, I got a couple, right? So I don't know if I can pinpoint an exact favorite, but out of my
You can give me like your top two.
okay. A lot of people are gonna say probably that 2014, 2015 season, right? When we had four All-Stars that year. We were the number one seed. We had Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver in our backcourt. We had DeMarre Carroll, Paul
Mm-hmm.
Millsap, and Al Horford. That was our starting five. And unfortunately, we got swept in the Eastern Conference Finals by LeBron and the Cavs. But that was a really exciting year. That we were the first team in NBA history to go 17-0 consecutively, right? So in the month of January that year in 2015, we actually won all 17 games in that month. So that was crazy. That's like a honorable mention. But my top two favorite teams, definitely the year a couple years ago when we made the ECFs, we took the Bucks to 6. And Trae Young unfortunately injured his ankle on that referee's foot. That was unfortunate, but yeah, that season was probably the funnest season I've ever had watching the Hawks. Just watching this team grow. There was a lot of great moments from that playoff run. Trae Young really ascended his status into superstardom with the performance at MSG. Then he goes to Philly and we beat Philly. Kevin Herter had that monster 27-point performance in Game 7. He'll forever be immortalized in Hawks history book. Danilo Gallinari stripping Joel Embiid pretty much in the last seconds of the game to ice it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Trae Young's 42-point performance against Milwaukee in game one. So yeah, in my opinion, that was probably my favorite season to watch, my favorite team. And that really what was crazy for me watching that, because a lot of people thought we were going to lose not only to the Knicks, that was like a 50-50. I saw a lot of people saying that the Knicks were going to win that year. We, of course, gentlemen swept them. And then we beat Philly, who every single person, every analyst, every content creator,
Mm-hmm.
everyone said Philly was going to beat us in 5 tops. So that just felt good. But my second favorite team was probably the '08 Atlanta Hawks, when we had Mike Bibby, Joe Johnson, Josh Smith. Al Horford was a rookie that year, and we took Boston.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were the 8th seed that year, and then Boston was the 1 seed. That was the only year they won the championship, and we took them to 7 games as the really 8th seed. So that was really exciting. That was the famous Zaza Pachulia moment when he almost got in a fight with Kevin Garnett. So yeah, that was really exciting. Those two would probably be my 2 favorite seasons and teams I've watched, because Joe Johnson, growing up, he was my favorite, like my all-time favorite Hawks
I
player.
get it. I definitely get it.
Yeah, ISO Joe, he was a killer. Before Joe Johnson, it was like Jason Terry, but once I got into like middle schoolers, Joe Johnson and was just a killer for us, middle school, high school.
So I'm gonna give you my in terms of the Hawks. I'm a historian, so we're gonna go back to the Dominique years.
Of
There were
course.
a few years of the Hawks where you guys had back-to-back 50-win seasons. That was 87 to 88, and then 88 to 89. Those are really good years, really good Dominique years. Spud
Just
Webb
couldn't
was,
get past those damn Celtics, Maliika.
yeah. I mean, the Celtics and the Lakers dominated, and the Sixers at the beginning of the 80s. But like they were going to the finals more than the Celtics at the beginning of the 80s. But yeah, the Celtics were the number one team in the East. And unfortunately for Dominique, yeah, but people knew Dominique was a great, he could have been a Laker. You know what I mean? Like they had, like Jerry West was choosing between Dominique and James Worthy. You know what I mean? Like so, but Dominique, Spud Webb, you had Doc Rivers on that team, Cliff Levingston on that team, who's a former who played for the Bulls. I forgot whether it was after that or I forgot the trace of this. But watching those teams, I mean, Dominique was just the human highlight reel. Like watching him those years, like I love watching him as a young, watching him as a player. Eventually, he ran into injuries, and I think that's what cost him, like getting the top 50, which he should have been on. But I really love those years of the Hawks, watching them. Reggie Theus was there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they had some players, and I know you guys still respect the history, and you honor and respect Dominique Wilkins, which is great. So I always like to highlight teams from the past, some of the rosters from the past. But appreciate you for give me your favorite team. So as we close out, like, what do you could tell the people, like, what do you do with the Hawks? Like, do you attend all the games? Do you have I know you have write-ups to the games during the season. So you or your team are going to each of the games, you're posting, the recaps and so how do you people like what do you do with Hawks Fan TV?
Yeah,
And how
absolutely.
can they follow everything you do?
Uh-huh. So yeah, Hawks Fan TV, we are basically we try to give content for the fans, by the fans, right? We
Yeah.
want to give all
Mhm.
insights and looks, and we're just kind of unapologetically us, right? I know on Twitter I might ruffle a lot of feathers on the timeline, and people might not agree with me, but yeah, it just is what it is, right? I think that's what
Yeah.
Twitter's for. I
Yeah.
think when you look at the landscape across like other NBA or just fan bases in general, there's always a
Mhm.
couple of kind of content creators that are that voice. And I feel like the Hawks just didn't have that. So it originally started off as just kind of a um passion project of mine where I would talk about the Hawks and write about their games, post-game analysis. So we do have a website, hawksfantv.com,
Yeah.
where we, write articles about the team, any rumors, any trade rumors, roster moves, etc. So we
You
have
guys
that.
have photographers too? Do you got people taking shots as well, like and not with the write-ups?
So we don't have any like media guys, like we don't have any photographers or videographers actually at the games. The closest thing we'll do is if one of either myself or someone on my team is actually at the game, then we'll just take videos and
Right.
pictures
Right.
on our phone and use that. But yeah, we also work with the team, so we're one of the credentialed media members. I'm actually going to media day next month to just talk about the team and ask some of the
That's
players and
awesome.
some questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's our second year in a row doing that, so we're looking forward to it. But yeah, it's really just Hawks Fan TV. It's just a voice for the fans, by the fans, to give a bunch of different perspectives on the team, keep them up to date, and make sure that they're in the know of what this team is up to, as well as giving our predictions, our analysis, and all. We welcome all sports debates. A lot of Hawks fans have different perspectives and stances on certain players and coaches, and we welcome all of that. So if you guys want to look at check our stuff out, you can go to hawksfantv.com. You can follow all of us on our socials, which is basically at hawksfantv on Twitter, Instagram, and our
Do you
website.
do YouTube?
So YouTube is kind of on a hold right now. We've been really focusing on the website and just doing Twitter Spaces and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
we also have podcasts open on Spotify, iTunes, etc. That's also at hawksfantv.com or at hawksfantv. So yeah, that's where you can find us. Very simple. It's a unified name. Hawks Fan TV is for
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're really looking forward to the new season.
I can attest that Hawks Fan TV is very active during the season. You'll find them starting, Twitter Spaces after the games or on an off day to really rant about what's going on with the team. They're very active. So, well, if you're on, I guess it's called X now, but forever Twitter. If you're on Twitter and you're a Hawks fan, pull up Hawks Fan TV. Great follow. So thank you, Alex, for being here and for giving us your time and breaking down the Hawks. I'm looking forward to watching you guys next season. When they play my Nets, I might be at that game. Who knows? Those games. But thanks for being here. And any last comments for people before we close out?
Yeah, no, just thank you so much, Maliika, for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and obviously we talk a lot and banter on Twitter. So I'm looking forward to all of our upcoming conversations, and best of luck to your Nets and also to your Hornets. I know you were kind of a Hornets fan, but you're not anymore. But the Hornets should be fun to
No,
watch.
I'm too invested. Like I've been like I will say, let me pause for a minute. Let me just, because I'm gonna have to edit this out. This is not related to the Hawks. So, let me just say real quick, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks Hawks Fan TV for being here. And have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.